Wheel of Names, give us something good. Hey everyone, welcome to Princess Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here for another randomized movie reaction for January. So if you don't know, all of this month, all of our weekend reactions on Saturdays and Sundays are randomized for movies. This is just a fun little thing to add on to the channel, but I've taken a bunch of movies that I've put into donation rewards. People have donated for me to react to these, and we're going to randomly spin a wheel to determine which movie we're going to react to today. I don't even have it downloaded because I don't know what we're reacting to. But there's 36 entries on this wheel, and it could be anything. There's a bunch of different genres represented, a bunch of different just types of movies in general. A few different donators. Most of them tend to be from one donator, Venom, because he donates the most on the channel. But there's other donators on here as well. So I'm definitely interested to see what we get chosen for this time, because it could be pretty much anything at this point. There's so many options, and if you're wondering when an option is taken off the wheel, I replace it with something of the same genre. So just as a note for like yesterday's reaction, I replaced it with another like thriller film and all. But I think we should just get this going and see what it is, because then I can talk about my thoughts going into it, and if I know anything about the movie ahead of time, before we start this up, and so I can go download whatever the movie is. So let me get this up real quick. So as you can see, we have a bunch of options on here. We're going to spin the wheel, see where it takes us. So let's go. And the winner is... Ooh, wow, that was close. Steel Magnolias, for the romance genre. It looks like it was like just barely off of Ready Player One. I was thinking that was going to win for a second there. But no, we got Steel Magnolias. So, what do I know about Steel Magnolias? Not much. I know it's a romance film. Obviously, I know what the genres for these are because that's how I sort them out on my list. I know this is a popular movie from, I want to say, the 80s. And I know that a lot of people really, really like it. I believe it's a female-led film. I believe the main characters are women. I don't know who the actresses are who play the characters. And I don't know what the actual like plot is centered about. The title Steel Magnolias doesn't give me much to work off of either. It's, let's be honest, a pretty how do I put this? It's a title that doesn't say much. Because Steel Magnolias, like, what is that supposed to mean? Like, a magnolia is a flower, right? Steel Magnolias, is it supposed to, like, represent, like, the characters' personalities? Like, oh, they can be delicate as a flower, like, super pretty and presentable, but they also have, like, a roughness to them. Is that what it's going for? Because that's the only thing I could possibly consider. But that's also presuming that it's meant to be taken as kind of like a metaphor. What if it's literal? What if there's literally just like these fake steel flowers in the movie that have something relevant to the plot? Like, who knows? Again, it doesn't give me a lot to work off of. There's movies where the title tells me quite a bit about the film and gets me like to know what it's going to be about, whether in regards to a character, a plot point, etc., etc. This doesn't really tell me anything. And like I said, I don't know who's in this at all. And I think that's always a fun aspect of doing reactions as blind as possible. Because it's like I get to be surprised whenever it's like I watch one of these movies and it's like, oh, hey, I know that actor. Or it's like, oh, shit, I love them. Something like that. But when I go into a movie or a show reaction or whatever, and I know exactly what to expect, it kind of takes away a lot of that fun. So that's why I try to go in blind to most things, and why, like, for a lot of, like, films, I don't even watch trailers much anymore. Um, because even when I'm watching on my own time, like if I go to the theater with like a friend or on my own or something, um, I like to be surprised. I like to not know what's going to happen, but especially for reactions because it makes a better reaction. So yeah, I don't know exactly what to expect from this, but I'm absolutely willing to give this a shot. I'm willing to see what this is. And hopefully it's one of those romance movies that I can really dig and get behind. It's kind of up in the air with me because I can either really like romance movies and get really behind them, or I can find them just really unbearably cringy. It's kind of up in the air, and I don't know what this is going to be for me. Um, But yeah, I'm again definitely excited to check this out. It's a really popular movie, I do know that, so I guess we're gonna see what all the hype is about. Let me go download that, and we'll get on with the reaction. Cutting in here real quick to remind you of all the awesome content we have on the channel. Between Monday and Friday, we have a plethora of awesome series reactions with 2 on Wednesday. We also have movie reactions every Saturday and Sunday. I do pre-record them during the week, but upload them on the weekend. And don't forget about all the gaming content over on the Princess of Gaming channel. We have Baldur's Gate 3 every single day, Horizon Forbidden West on Mondays and Fridays, Tuesdays and Thursdays is Life is Strange, Wednesdays and Sundays is Red Dead Redemption 2, and on Saturdays we have Nier Automata. A lot of great gaming content every day. Don't forget to click the link in the description below to follow it to today's reaction. I redirect everything just due to copyright reasons. And please subscribe to the channel and like the video if you want to see more awesome content such as this. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at today's reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So I was looking things up, and apparently the person who wrote the play and the screenplay for this film adaptation, Harling, wrote the story basing it upon his own sister, Susan Harling Robinson, who died in 1985 of complications from type 1 diabetes. Shelby, Julia Roberts' character, is based off of his sister. So yeah, it's like this is based off of a true story. Obviously, like the specifics and the story itself are fictional, but it's based off of something that did happen. And I was actually really surprised because I was looking up like critical response, and it actually received mixed reviews upon release, which I have heard this only like talked about as like excessively positive. Like this is one of those movies that people like praise to high heavens, along with like the likes of The Godfather and whatnot. I'm not even kidding by putting it on that level. That's what I've seen people talk about it in terms of. But apparently it was mixed, and on Rotten Tomatoes, as always, take it with a grain of salt, it has 73%, based off of 81 critic reviews, with an average rating of 6.5 out of 10. Which is not what I expected, because again, of what I've always heard of this movie and how I've always heard people talk about it. So let me share my thoughts. I would say maybe 90, maybe go as low as 85% of this movie is boring as fuck. The vast majority of this film is excessively boring, and like you saw me like checking my phone and stuff. I was looking down like this. Part of that was because I was getting important messages that I needed to check in regards to this weekend and everything. But also, it's like there were points where I was just not super invested. And I mentioned this in the reaction when I was talking about, like, oh, sorry for not saying much for a bit here. I just haven't had much to say. And that's because I didn't find there anything in the film at that point worth talking about. Most of what I had to say was based off of like reaction of what was happening on screen, And there were a couple moments where I paused it to like talk about stuff and to actually like give like full commentary on certain aspects and whatnot. But again, I would say most of this film I just found really disinteresting. And I think the way that it's paced and presented is part of the reason for that. This movie starts off with like the preparations and everything for the wedding. And like the first half hour to 40 minutes is just that. But then the movie like progresses at different points and it like has these time skips, but it doesn't tell you how long it's skipping. And absolutely nothing for the most part actually clues you into that. The only times that you can guess anything is when like another holiday shows up. Like the thing is, okay, so the beginning of the movie takes place around Easter time, spring, right? The movie ends at Easter time, spring. Did all of this happen in a single year? Is that what we're led to believe? How long was Shelby like comatose before they pulled the plug? There's a lot of questions. Because it can't have all happened within a single year, because by the end, her son, Jack Jr., was like, what, 3 years old? So that means that this happened within a few years. He was like 3, 4 years old or something. So if this all happened within a few years, there's really no way to know, like, there's not a good sense of time. You can't tell, like, when a certain scene starts and it's like, oh, it's sometime in the future. You can tell that, but you can't tell exactly how far, because you can't tell by their looks. You can't tell by how any of the characters look or act. It's like, oh, Annelle at the beginning is super shy and like very timid and everything. Then when it jumps ahead, she's suddenly like super outgoing and everything. It jumps ahead again at a certain point, and now she's super religious, and it's like, okay, how long of a time was that? Once Jack Jr. is born, you can start getting a little bit more of a sense of time, just because of seeing how much he ages. But even then, it's not like exact. You can't exactly tell. And it's just, I think a lot of that led to the film being very hard to keep track of. And again, when the movie is also told in a very calm manner, for lack of a better way to put it, it comes across as just boring, to me at least. And I'm not saying that this movie needed a bunch of action or constant melodrama or anything, but it's like the music choices were so bland. Like, you could have had more interesting upbeat music. You could have had better pacing and more interesting moments. These characters had some interesting bits of chemistry with them. Why couldn't you have done more with that? You could have done so much with Weezer alone. And I understand, like, this seems to be going for, like, kind of a more down-to-earth, almost, not realistic, that's the wrong way to put it. Down-to-earth is a really good way to put it, though. It goes for a really down-to-earth style to where it's not trying to be, like, this cinematic experience. It's trying to, like, just tell the story of these women going through this time in their lives. But that's all it is. It doesn't give us anything more interesting than that. The movie just kind of starts off and it feels like it's the middle of a film. Because it just starts and throws you into everything without actually, like, setting up a beginning of a film. You know what I mean? It feels like it's starting in the middle of a story already. And I guess that's kind of the point. Like, you're picking up on this, on the lives of these women and these characters, like, not at the beginning. Like, they already know each other. That you're going through all of this outside of it now. You're going through this wedding at the beginning, and it's like it feels like it just feels like there's a lot of context you missed, and you get some of that spread throughout, but it just feels off. And again, through the soundtrack and the pacing and everything, it's like it doesn't do anything to elevate any of the scenes in a way that makes them entertaining. It's a very slow-paced, boring film, for the most part. And this is where I want to like specify why I only say 85 to 90%. Because that other 10 to 15% makes it worth it. To sit through a film that, for the most part, is really boring and really hard to sit through. Like, I'm sitting here, like, especially for, like, honestly, the first hour. And I'm thinking, like, I'm not into this at all. But once you really get to the bigger parts and the more interesting parts, that's where it really starts to flesh out. And on top of that, this is going to sound really bad. I have no idea how this is going to sound, and I apologize. I'm not trying to sound really mean or anything here. But the movie became significantly better when Shelby died. And it's not because of Shelby. I'm not saying that Julia Roberts or her character as Shelby were bad, or that the movie suffered because of it. It's actually, the movie picked up after her death in terms of pacing, in terms of interest, in terms of even the acting improved for everyone. I mean, I guess outside of Julia Roberts, because her character was gone at that point, but and everyone, all the actors were good. I want to make that clear. The acting in this was good the entire way through, but everything picked up after her passing. The movie felt like it really just finally started. And that's weird to me, right? Like, there were maybe a couple moments before that were fun or exciting, but for the most part it was really bland. But once she actually passed, it's like that's where you really started to feel like where the movie was going. And that was almost at the end of the film. Honestly, the best part of this movie was the scene after the funeral with Sally Field's breakdown. Easily the best performance of the film by far. Sally Field's performance in that scene was like amazing. And again, Sally Field's amazing. She's a phenomenal actress, always has been. But her performance there was just, it got me to tear up. It got me super emotional because of her performance. And even like with afterwards, with what's her face, the one character, telling her, it's like, come on, hit Weezer, smack her across the face, we'll make t-shirts and stuff. It's like, even that, like with making her laugh and making her like brightening up her mood and everything after what had happened, it's like it felt natural and it felt a lot more, for lack of a better word, human. I hate to say it, but it's like a lot of this movie just felt like so bland, and it's like it felt like it was like so scripted and robotic. It didn't feel like, a lot of it just didn't feel like natural human pacing and interaction. And again, it's not the actors at all. It's nothing about them. I'm not ragging on any of the actors in this. They all did phenomenally. They were definitely a highlight here. It's about the pacing and direction and writing and everything. It's so monotonous and hard to sit through. Until after Shelby dies. And then it just suddenly, like, so I was reading like the thoughts that people had on it, and they were saying like, oh, it descends into melodrama at the end. It's like, okay, Well, apparently that's a good thing because that's where the film actually starts getting good. But it's at the end of the film. And it's like, it didn't have a chance to really last with that. It didn't have the chance to, you know, to stick with that because it was already ending. They were wrapping everything up, closing everything off. But it feels like it had just started. And that's, I think that's my biggest issue with this film. That once the movie started getting going, in my opinion, is when it ended. It ended at, like, the climax. And that's, the movie's not supposed to end at the climax. It's not supposed to end once it actually starts getting good. If I were to give this just an initial rating based off of my first impressions here, just seeing this movie once, 6 out of 10. And honestly, if it weren't for how much better it became at the end, it would probably be like a 3. And honestly, the 3 would have only been because of the great acting. It was that slow and monotonous for me. And I know that might be an unpopular opinion. Because again, even though this film apparently on release got mixed reviews, I guess it's got some kind of like level of a cult following because people only ever talk about this movie as excessively positively. And so I apologize if my thoughts here are like not what you would have expected or not popular. But I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to tell you that, oh, I really like this movie just because it's popular. I'm going to tell you my thoughts. I'm going to be honest. And it's like, it was very for the most part. And when I was saying like, oh, it kind of becomes worth it at the end and everything, it's like, I mean that in like the barest sense. Like, it's worth it to see that performance from Sally Field. And it's not one of those cases where you could just watch the performance on like YouTube or something, because you need the context. You need all of that buildup. That is required. So you have to sit through a shit ton of slog, a shit ton of boring, just uninteresting, like, content, for lack of a better word. I was trying to think of something else, I couldn't think of it. But you have to sit through all of that just to get to that, and it's like, it's worth it in the end, because that performance is that good, but it doesn't work without the context. But this is not a movie I will watch again. because that scene is not going to hit as hard as it did when watching it blind, without having known it was going to happen. No, now that I know that happens, it's not worth watching again. I'm not going to sit through all of that boring slog for a scene where it's not going to hit me the same way. It's not going to have the same effect. I have no desire to see this ever again. But it's not the worst movie I've seen. It's above halfway. So there's that. It's more than a 5 out of 10. Maybe a lot of other people see more in this film than I do, and I mean, clearly they do. But it's just like, I don't see the appeal in most of it. I've watched slow-paced films before. I've watched movies that have taken a bit to get going, or that, you know, just don't really have like a huge amount of energy to them. But even most of those are better than this. Because the thing is, all of the actors did amazing in this. They carried this movie easily. but they weren't enough to make it entertaining in spite of its slow ass pacing and boring writing and all, and just disinteresting story. Like, as good as the actresses and everyone in this was, it wasn't enough to take away the amount of, like, just... It wasn't enough to stop it from being just completely boring and disinteresting most of the time. It was... I would not call this a really good movie. Again, I wouldn't call it, like, really bad, because it does have those slightly redeeming factors. But the pacing of this is just so slow that it completely, like, it fails to hook me in and completely loses my interest, like, the vast majority of the runtime. This is just one of those that isn't for me, clearly. It's one of those films that I just can't get into. And, like, you can't even say that it's because there's not much happening in this film, because my favorite movie of all time is 12 Angry Men, and that's literally a single scene film. It's like the entire movie of 12 Angry Men takes place in, like, well, okay, 99% of it takes place in the jury room, with only, like, a half a minute before and half a minute after shown, like, outside of it. The entire rest of the film takes place in a single jury room with just these 12 men arguing over the innocence or guilt of a defendant. That's the entire film. It is entirely centered around that one thing. And yet, that's my favorite movie of all time. And it's not just because of having amazing actors, though it does. It's because of how it's written. It's because of how it's directed. Things that are not, like, inherently exciting are made exciting. Through the score, through the acting, through the direction, the camera work. It's like, that movie came out, like, over 30 years before this one. And it's like, I feel like Steel Magnolias should have taken some cues from that on how to take a slow story like that and make it exciting and fun and interesting. And I'm talking specifically the one from the 50s, not the 90s remake, just to specify, to make very clear. So yeah, it's specifically how it's executed. It's just clearly not for me. It's not my kind of movie. It bored me to tears most of the time. And then when it wasn't boring me to tears, it did actually bring me to tears. But it's like it wasn't enough to save the film for me. Not completely. So, tell me in the comments below what you thought of this movie. Did you like it more than I did? Are you more into that kind of thing? But I think I just thought of something. I think I figured out, like, the best way to kind of put this. If you like standing around talking about nothing with your friends just because they're your friends, then you probably would like this movie. But if you get really bored and annoyed when your friends are just standing around talking about nothing and you're like, I kind of want to go, we're trying to do stuff here, then you're probably going to find this movie hard to sit through. And I'm the latter. Like, if I'm going out somewhere with my friends and we're just standing, like, in the parking lot just talking for, like, 10, 20 minutes, it's like, I'm just so fucking bored. I'm like, can we go? I'm trying to get somewhere. And it's like, it's the same thing with, like, family and stuff. It's like when they just want to just talk. And it's like, I don't like to just do that. Despite how much I talk on the channel and everything, because, it's literally part of the job. I'm a reactor. I have to talk a lot. I don't like just holding, like, bland conversation with people. Like, oh, how's your life? What's going on? It's like, I don't fucking know. Nothing has changed since the last time I saw you. Like, what am I supposed to say? People talking about their jobs and, like, what goes on, like, on their daily life. It's like, how do you do that? It's so boring. I don't want to burden somebody by talking about, like, oh, this is what happened in my day, during my day. No. I don't want to burden someone by telling them that. I want to go out and do something. I want to hang out. I want to go to a party, play games, watch movies, hang out, like, go bowling or something even. I don't want to talk about my day. I don't want to talk about the weather. I've never understood that. I've never understood how people can just stand around and talk about nothing forever. But that's how this movie feels. That is exactly how this movie feels to me. Like just standing around talking about nothing forever. But then you finally get in the car and go somewhere and it finally starts to get good, but then the day is over. Because you spent all that time talking about nothing. That is exactly what this movie feels like. And again, I wasn't expecting this movie to have, like, excessive, like, action or anything. Like, I thought it was a romance movie for one. It's abso-fucking-lutely not. This is a drama. Like, romance is in it, but it's not even a highlight of the film. It's, like, barely there. The movie is a drama. And it's just like, it's not even that it wasn't what I expected or wanted, because I didn't know what to expect or want. It just wasn't entertaining. It wasn't fun to watch. It was boring as hell most of the time. And again, when it stopped being boring, when it started to get interesting, the movie's already over. It's like, what the fuck? It just started to get good. I almost kind of wish the movie started with the death and went with everything after that. Instead of starting with the wedding. And I know that, again, I know this might be an unpopular opinion. I know these thoughts might not mesh with everybody else. But it's all just opinion. It's all subjective. It's based on my viewing experience and what I guess, like in films. And I just was not a fan of this one. But hey, I mean, I guess we have a little bit of a streak going on with these random movies. Because last week we had a movie I didn't like, then a movie I liked. This week we have a movie I liked, and then a movie I didn't like. So it's like, it seems like we're going to be one good, one not as good each week. But that's the point of randomization. I don't know what we're going to get, even more so than ever. So like I said, tell me your thoughts down below. If you disagree with me, don't be afraid to say so. I am completely good with you having a difference of opinion. But let me know your thoughts. And for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.